My name is Clara, I'm 39, and I've been married to the same man for nearly 14 years. And I don't know when exactly it happened, but I stopped recognizing myself. This woman I've become. She's quieter. She apologizes too much. She folds his socks and avoids eye contact when he's frustrated. She reaches out at night, only to feel him already turned away, breathing evenly, his back a wall she doesn't try to climb anymore. I didn't used to be this version of myself. I was someone full of color once. We were something full of color once. I met Jeremy when I was 24 and working at an indie bookstore in Portland. He walked in asking for a book of Rumi poems, smiling like he knew he was charming and a little bit dangerous. The first time we kissed was in the rain. I know that sounds cliché, but it really happened like that, on the corner of 8th and Hawthorne, soaked to the skin, his hands in my hair, my heart thudding like it was trying to run straight through my chest. It wasn't just passion back then. It was partnership. Late-night grocery runs. Inside jokes at funerals. Fingers tracing spines in bed, books and bodies. He used to pull me toward him in the mornings, all sleepy and warm, and mumble something stupid like "Don't go. I need 5 more lifetimes of this." And I believed him. I believed in us. But slowly, something changed. Maybe it was the pressure of life. Mortgage. Work stress. The miscarriage we never talked about. Or maybe we stopped seeing each other. Now, when he kisses me goodbye, it's a dry press to the forehead. A check mark. When he says "I love you," it feels like a reflex. Something he says right after, "Do you need anything from the store?" The other night, I reached out and rubbed his back while he was washing dishes. Just a small thing. No agenda. Just wanting to connect. He didn't flinch, but he didn't lean into it either. "Everything okay?" I asked, watching the way his shoulders stayed stiff. "Yeah. Just tired." That's what he always says. Just tired. And maybe he is. God knows, so am I. But sometimes I wonder if we're both just tired of this. Of pretending we still speak the same language, when lately every conversation feels like a translation effort. And every silence feels like a punishment. Last week, we went to a friend's dinner party. At one point, he reached for my hand under the table, fingers brushing mine. And for a second, I melted. For a second, I thought maybe the flicker was still there. But when I looked up at him, he was staring at his phone. He hadn't even realized he'd touched me. Later that night, we had sex. If you can call it that. It was slow and quiet, and I kept waiting for the part where we clicked, where something lit up between us. But it never did. His eyes were closed the whole time. Mine stayed open. I stared at the ceiling and counted the cracks in the plaster. 6. Afterward, he rolled over, whispered, "Night, babe," and fell asleep in minutes. And me? I lay there, wide awake, feeling lonelier than I ever did when I was actually alone. But here's the moment that really got me. The one that lodged itself into my chest like a thorn. It was so small, I almost didn't notice it. Yesterday morning, I stood in the kitchen pouring coffee when Jeremy walked in. I smiled, automatic, hopeful. I even reached out and touched his arm. He pulled away, just slightly, and said, "Can you not right now? I'm late." It wasn't cruel. It wasn't even said with anger. It was just dismissive. Like I was a nuisance. A distraction from his real life. And that's when I realized something. It's not that we stopped loving each other. That's too easy. It's that we stopped choosing each other. And I'm not sure I remember how to reach him anymore. Or if I even want to. That same evening, just after 9 p.m., my neighbor's husband, Daniel, knocked on our back door. Jeremy was already asleep upstairs. And what Daniel said to me that night, it changed everything. I never thought I'd long for a conversation so badly that I'd count the moments we weren't talking. But there I was, crouched on the edge of our bed at dawn, waiting for Jeremy's phone alarm to ping. He's a pediatrician at the city clinic, emergency shifts, late rounds, impromptu baby checkups that stretch past midnight. He thinks saving lives grants him a kind of immunity. Don't take it personally, he says when I bristle. But I do take it personally. When his shift ends at 6 a.m., he staggers through the front door, still in scrubs. I'm usually already up, coffee in hand, my feet pressed against the cold tile. I imagine words on my tongue. Tell me about your night. Hold me close. Look at me. Instead, I nod and set out his breakfast. Thanks, Clara, he mumbles, spooning yogurt into his mouth. He's moving so fast, washing his hands, gulping toast, that none of it feels like an offering. It feels like an obligation. Yesterday I tried again. I reached across the table, fingertips grazing his arm. Tell me something good, I said, voice soft. He blinked. Swallowed. Then patted my hand and stood up. I need that lab report signed before noon, he said, heading for his laptop. I sat there, hand cold where his palm had been. That evening, determined, I wore the green dress he once adored, soft silk that hugged my curves. I braided my hair. I lit candles on the dining table. I cooked his favorite, lemon chicken with rosemary potatoes. He walked in after shift, cheeks flushed, scrubs rumpled. Wow, he said, flicking off his shoes. This looks great. I smiled, waiting for more. Instead, he sat, grabbed a piece of chicken, and began eating in silence. Every few bites, he glanced at me as if puzzled by the atmosphere. Is something wrong? He asked between forkfuls. Only everything, I blurted. You haven't touched me in days. He froze, fork half raised. I held you this morning. No, you didn't. He sighed, set down his utensils. Clara, I'm exhausted. I'm touching you all the time, when I hug you at the door, when I kiss you goodnight. His words trailed off. He reached across the table, hand hovering. I stood abruptly. Stop trying to fix it with your body. His eyes flashed. I'm trying to show you I love you. But I don't feel loved. Silence closed in like a door. He looked hurt, confused, like a child who's flunked a test he didn't know he was taking. Then just tell me what you need. I wanted to scream, listen to me. Really listen. Instead I shook my head and walked away. Later, I found myself on the porch, arms wrapped around my knees, breathing in the night air. That's when Daniel, my neighbor's husband, came crawling back into the story. His knock at my back door had startled me. Polite, earnest, strange at 9 p.m. I'm sorry to bother you, he'd said, voice low. He's a graphic designer who works from home, comfortable in his own exhaustion. But I couldn't sleep. Anne. I know this sounds odd, but I thought you might want someone to talk to. That night, I realized how desperately I missed words that landed like footprints instead of fists. So when I turned to Daniel in the pale porch light, I didn't fling him away. I let him sit beside me on the concrete step. We talked until our knees went numb, about the rainstorm forecast, about his daughter's first day of kindergarten, about nothing and everything. I opened up about how invisible I've been feeling, how Jeremy's arms feel like the last safe place, except they're empty when I reach for them. Daniel listened without touching me once. No awkward hands on my shoulders, no lips reaching for mine. Just his green eyes, patient and steady, as if he could hold my sadness simply by staying present. When the night sky turned toward dawn, he stood and brushed lint from his jeans. Talk to him, he said softly. You deserve more than half-heard words. I nodded, heart pounding. But the next morning, when I tried to bring it up, tried to find the words, I caught only the sliver of his exhaustion. His eyes flicked away, and before I could finish, his pager went off. He kissed my cheek and sprinted for his car. Once again, I stood alone with half-formed sentences tangled on my tongue. And in that space, confusion blossomed like acid. What if I was overreacting? What if I'd leaned on Daniel too much? What if my longing for words was actually fear that we'd simply been outgrown? That afternoon, Jeremy stopped by my office. He knows my job, a community arts coordinator, often late for rehearsals and gallery openings. He grabbed me by the waist, spun me around, and planted a kiss on my lips so abrupt I almost dropped my notebook. But my mind was still spinning with Daniel's quiet empathy. I broke away. I need more than this, I said, voice shaking. Jeremy's brow furrowed. Clara, you're overthinking. And so the cycle continued, my words unheard, his touches misaligned, and a neighbor's late-night kindness echoing in every hallway of my heart. Jeremy thinks touching me is enough. He thinks a hand on my thigh during a movie, a quick kiss on the neck while I'm doing dishes, or the way he pulls me against him in bed before falling asleep, he thinks all of it counts as connection. But it doesn't. Not anymore. I don't want his hands if I can't have his heart with them. It sounds dramatic, I know. But when you've been living in a quiet drought for as long as I have, even the lightest touch starts to feel like a slap when it isn't followed by presence. Jeremy's a firefighter. He works long shifts, 24 hours on, 48 off. He's built like safety and smells like smoke and cedarwood. There was a time when I'd lie awake waiting for him to come home just so I could feel the weight of him next to me. That weight used to mean something. Now it just feels like proof that he's real. That we still live in the same house. Yesterday, he came back from a grueling fire call. He was still in his navy blue uniform shirt, the reflective strip down his pants catching the porch light. I opened the door and smiled, not because I felt joyful, but because I wanted to. Because I wanted to be the wife who smiled at her husband. Long day, he said, leaning in to kiss me before I could even answer. His lips brushed mine. Rough, rushed. Then his arms were around me, tugging me into him, pressing his hands along my lower back, his mouth finding that sensitive spot below my ear. I stiffened. Not because I didn't want him. But because I wanted more. Jeremy, can we just talk first? I asked, my voice muffled against his chest. He pulled back. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, I don't know. I need you to be here. With me. Not just, on me. He frowned like I'd spoken in a language he couldn't understand. You're always saying I don't show you affection, he said, arms dropping. So when I do, now that's a problem too? That's not what I mean. But of course, it sounded exactly like that. He moved past me into the kitchen, grabbing a bottle of water from the fridge and unscrewing it like it had insulted him. You don't want me to touch you, fine. I'll give you space. No, I said, following him. I don't want space, I want intimacy. There's a difference. You're impossible to please sometimes, Clara. He didn't mean it to be cruel. But it landed like a punch anyway. I spent the rest of the night folding laundry, each sock and shirt a small act of control. Around 11, I crawled into bed. He was already asleep, sprawled on his stomach like a man who didn't have anything left to give. And the worst part? I touched his back, just lightly. Ran a single finger down his spine. He didn't stir. Didn't lean in. Didn't reach for me like he used to. That's when I realized it, he thinks he's trying. He thinks these scattered touches are love. And maybe they are, for him. Maybe that's all he's ever known how to give. But I need something else. I need to be seen. Heard. Held emotionally before I'm ever touched physically. The next day, I couldn't focus at work. I'm an art coordinator for the local gallery. We're preparing for a summer showcase, and I was supposed to finalize the exhibit layout. But every photograph I looked at, every couple caught mid-laugh or mid-kiss, just made the ache in my chest worse. When I got home, the house was dark. Jeremy's note on the table read, "Called in for an extra shift. Be home tomorrow. Love you." 3 words. They used to light me up. Now they felt printed. Automatic. Like the signature at the bottom of a form. I curled up on the couch, scrolling absent-mindedly through my phone. That's when I saw the porch light flicker through the curtains. And then the soft knock. It was Daniel, my neighbor's husband. He looked nervous, eyes darting behind him. He held a bottle of wine in one hand and a folded newspaper in the other. "Hey, sorry, it's late," he said. "But I just needed to talk to someone. Can I come in for a minute?" Something in his voice cracked open a piece of me I'd kept boarded up for too long. And I let him in. The next morning, Jeremy came home early. I was in the kitchen reheating leftover potatoes when I heard the front door creak open. His boots were heavy against the tile. He never tiptoed like he used to. No more slow, playful sneaking behind me with a back hug or a kiss on the shoulder. "Clara," he called, voice thick with exhaustion. "In here." He stepped in, eyes red-rimmed but soft. The kind of softness that says I'm sorry for something I haven't figured out yet. "Hey." He crossed the kitchen and wrapped his arms around me from behind. "Missed you." I froze. Not visibly, not enough for him to notice, but my whole body tensed beneath the gesture. His arms, once a harbor, now felt like a net. He kissed my cheek, lips warm. I nodded slightly, murmured, "Hey," and stirred the potatoes like they were the most important thing in the world. He pulled back just enough to rest his chin on my shoulder. "How was your night?" "Quiet," I said. I didn't mention Daniel. Or the wine we didn't open. Or the way we sat on my porch in complete, comforting silence for 10 whole minutes without needing to explain our lives to each other. Jeremy turned me gently to face him. His eyes searched mine, and for a second, I wanted to surrender. To fall into him and just pretend that this, us, was still easy. He leaned in for a kiss. I let him. But as his lips moved against mine, I felt it again, that hollowness. I tried to meet him there. I really did. I moved my mouth in rhythm, tilted my head slightly. But all I could think about was how practiced it felt. Like a muscle memory we were both clinging to, hoping it would mean what it used to. He deepened the kiss, one hand drifting to the small of my back. His other hand brushed the curve of my hip, then lower, resting over the back pocket of my jeans. That's when I pulled away. Not dramatically. Just enough. A subtle step back, like I suddenly remembered the potatoes on the stove. "Careful," I said, reaching for the spatula. "They're burning." He blinked. "Oh. Right." The pause between us stretched long and awkward. Jeremy rubbed the back of his neck. "I was thinking maybe we could, take it easy tonight. Order something, stay in bed. Watch that show you like, maybe not watch too much of it." He grinned like he used to. Like a man offering intimacy wrapped in playfulness. And God, I wanted to want him. But instead, all I felt was a wave of guilt and dread. I nodded slowly. "Yeah, maybe." He leaned in, pressed another kiss to my cheek, and then walked toward the shower. I heard him whistling, our song, the one we danced to in the kitchen the night we got engaged. And I hated how much it didn't move me. I stood alone, holding a hot pan with a spatula I didn't remember grabbing, and my chest felt too full of things I couldn't say. It's not that I don't love him. I do. Or I did. Or maybe I just love the version of us I keep replaying in my head. But every touch feels like a question I can't answer. Every kiss feels like pressure. Every look that lingers too long makes me feel like I owe something I'm no longer sure I can give. And in that moment, my thoughts narrowed into one sharp, shame-laced question: why does everything have to turn into sex? It happened on a Thursday. Nothing dramatic. No shouting, no betrayal, no third-party discovery. Just a quiet dinner and a glass of red wine that tipped something loose inside me. Jeremy had come home early again. He said he traded shifts so we could reconnect. He cooked dinner, which was rare. Pasta, salad, garlic bread. I could smell the effort. He even shaved. I watched him bustle around the kitchen like he was trying to stage a memory. One of those good ones. From a time before things got blurry between us. He dimmed the lights, lit a candle, and said, "Okay. No phones, no distractions. Just us." I smiled like I was supposed to. I sat down across from him and twirled the pasta around my fork. He poured the wine. We clinked glasses, and I forced myself to look at him, really look. He was handsome. Still was. Same smile, just a little more tired. Same laugh lines. Same voice. "Tell me something good," I said softly. The same words I'd said a week ago that had gone unanswered. This time, he paused. "Okay, well, I didn't burn anything." "That's good, right?" I gave a weak laugh. He grinned, proud of the joke. Then he reached across the table and took my hand. "I know things have been off. I feel it too. But I want us back, Clara. I miss you." I looked down at our fingers. His thumb was tracing mine in slow circles. Familiar. Meant to soothe. But it didn't. It irritated me. The slowness of it. The expectation of what came next. The weight of his need sitting silently in the room. I nodded, chewing too hard on a piece of bread. I didn't trust myself to speak. He looked at me with that patient expression again. "I was thinking maybe we could go away this weekend. Just us. Leave the phones, sleep in, take baths. Reconnect, you know?" He said baths and my stomach turned. I pushed my chair back. "Why does every solution you have involve being naked?" Jeremy blinked. "What?" I stood up, crossing my arms. "Baths, massages, weekend getaways, it's always something physical. It's never about what I'm saying." "You don't hear me." "I am listening," he said, confused. "You said we needed time." "I'm trying." "No, you're trying to seduce me into forgetting we have a problem," I snapped. He stood now too, napkin falling from his lap. "Clara, I'm not trying to seduce you. I'm trying to be close to you again. You're the one who's pulled away. Because I'm exhausted." My voice cracked. Silence. I hadn't realized I was crying until I tasted salt on my lips. I don't want candles. I don't want wine or foot rubs or bubble baths. I want a conversation where I don't feel like a burden. I want to tell you I'm sad without being kissed quiet. I want to feel like I matter without being touched into submission. He stared at me, jaw tight. "You think I'm trying to shut you up? Seriously?" "I think you don't know how to be with me unless we're having sex," I said. And then I saw it, the hurt flash across his face. Not anger. Not disbelief. Just pain. He dropped his gaze. "I didn't realize I made you feel like that." I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but the shame was already crawling up my throat. He stepped away from the table. Picked up the plates, mechanically scraping them into the trash. The candle flickered between us like it was gasping for air. I stood there, frozen, hands trembling slightly. What had I just done? The man who once carried me, drunk and barefoot, across a gravel parking lot so I wouldn't hurt my feet, was now scraping dinner into the sink like it meant nothing. And maybe it didn't. Not anymore. Later, I sat on the couch, curled in a sweater that still smelled like him, knees drawn to my chest. I played back the night over and over. Every word. Every expression on his face. The way his voice cracked when he said, "I didn't realize," what if he'd meant it? What if that dinner was his best version of trying? And I'd crushed it. Pushed it out of his hands like it was never enough, because, if I was being honest, I didn't want it to be enough. Because then I'd have to stay. Because if I admitted that he was trying, then the problem wasn't just him. It was me, too. Me and the slowly unraveling grief I didn't know how to name. A week passed. Then another. And the silence between us settled in like furniture, quiet, fixed, heavy. We moved around each other like strangers renting the same space, brushing shoulders in the hallway, murmuring polite nothings. "There's more coffee. Your package came. I'll be late." Every sentence was a placeholder for what we weren't saying. I missed him. I did. Not just his presence, but the us we used to be. The sound of him humming in the shower. The stupid way he'd try to make up song lyrics on the spot just to hear me laugh. The way he used to rest his head in my lap on lazy Sundays and ask me about the book I was reading, even if he didn't care about the plot. Now, he came home and went straight to the garage or the shower. Dinner was silent. Bedtime, separate. He didn't reach for me anymore, and that should have given me relief. Finally, he wasn't expecting anything. But it didn't. It stung. Because now I wasn't just lonely, I was invisible. One night I walked past the bathroom and saw the light still on. The door was cracked just enough that I could see him sitting on the edge of the tub, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. He wasn't doing anything. He was just sitting there. It hit me harder than I expected. He looked so human. So unlike the man I'd spent the last few weeks villainizing in my head. There was no armor, no performance, just a man who seemed completely lost. And suddenly I remembered, Jeremy never had the tools for this kind of emotional landscape. He'd been raised by a father who never apologized and a mother who kept her grief folded in silence. Touch was the only language he was taught. Touch was love. And here I was, rejecting the only words he knew how to speak. I wanted to go to him. To sit beside him and press my shoulder against his like we used to do when we didn't have answers. Just to say, "I see you. I'm still here." But I didn't. I went back to our room and closed the door. Later, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. I thought about Daniel, not in a romantic way, not anymore, but about the way he listened that night on the porch. The way he didn't try to fix me, or fix anything. He just witnessed. I wondered if I could ever have that with Jeremy again. Could I rebuild something that had eroded so slowly I didn't notice the rot until it was deep in the beams? The next morning, I found a note on the kitchen counter. Not a text. Not a checklist. A handwritten note in his blocky, careful print. "I know I hurt you without meaning to. I don't know how to make it better, but I want to. If there's still a door open between us, tell me. I'll walk through it, if you'll let me." I stood there with the note in my hands, coffee growing cold beside me. And for the first time in weeks, I let myself cry, not out of anger or frustration, but out of grief. For what we'd become. For what we still might be. I don't know what I'll say to him yet. But I think I'll leave the door open. At least for now. I didn't answer the note right away. I left it on the fridge for 2 days, reading it every time I walked past like it might sound different the next time. But it never did. On the third night, I came home to find Jeremy sitting on the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees, staring blankly at the muted TV. He looked up as I set down my keys. "We should talk," I said. My voice didn't shake. Maybe that was its own kind of loss. He nodded. "Okay." He clicked the TV off and faced me fully. We didn't sit side by side. We didn't hold hands. We sat at opposite ends of the couch, knees turned slightly inward, like we were leaning towards something we couldn't see yet. I told him the truth. That I was lonely in ways I didn't know how to name. That his touches felt like expectations. That I missed emotional warmth more than physical contact. That I'd grown tired of translating every kiss into reassurance. He didn't interrupt. He didn't defend himself. He just listened, jaw tight, fingers laced, foot bouncing under the coffee table like a nervous tell he couldn't stop. Then he said, "I kept thinking if I just kept loving you the only way I knew how, you'd come back to me." And I said, "I did come back. 100 times. You just didn't see it." The silence that followed was the kind that used to scare me. But this time it felt necessary. We weren't waiting to strike or prove a point. We were just sitting in the truth. Finally. Eventually, he reached across the space between us, not to grab me, not to pull me in, but to let his hand rest lightly on mine. No pressure. No agenda. Just a touch. I didn't pull away. But I didn't lean in either. We sat like that for a while. Then he said, quietly, "I don't think we broke. I think we wore down." I nodded, eyes stinging. "I don't hate you. I just don't know if I can keep doing this version of us." He swallowed hard, blinking faster than usual. "I know." Later that night, I found him asleep on the couch, curled on his side with a blanket haphazardly pulled up to his chest. I stood in the doorway for a long time. Then I walked over, knelt down, and kissed his forehead. Not as a wife desperate to repair things. Not as a woman still searching for more. But as someone saying goodbye, softly, without fanfare. We hadn't collapsed. We'd faded. And in some strange way, that made it harder. You know how people say things fall apart? That's not always true. Sometimes, they dissolve. No sharp break. No final straw. Just a slow, quiet erosion until one day you're standing in the same kitchen you've stood in 1,000 times before, and you realize, you're more roommate than partner, more polite than present, more tired than together. I don't think Jeremy ever stopped loving me. I think he loved me in the way he knew how, with action, protection, consistency. Touch. That was always his language. He'd fix things. He'd carry heavy things. He'd hold me when I cried. But he didn't know how to sit in it with me. To hear the ache behind my silence. To hold space for the version of me that wasn't always easy or warm. And maybe I didn't know how to teach him. Maybe I didn't even fully understand what I needed until it was too late to ask for it kindly. I used to think intimacy was just skin. Kisses, hands, long nights under warm sheets. I thought that if the physical part was working, we were okay. But it's not about how often someone touches your body. It's about whether they notice when you've gone quiet. Whether they ask what you dreamed last night. Whether they hold your gaze when you're unraveling and stay there, really stay, without flinching. Desire isn't just chemistry. It's emotional risk. It's being seen and still chosen. There were years when Jeremy and I got that right. We really did. I won't rewrite history. We were once the couple people envied, easy laughter, soft affection, quick recoveries. We had magic. But life demands maintenance. Love isn't a spell you cast once. It's a house you live in, one that needs fixing when it leaks, needs warmth when it gets cold, needs airing out when it starts to smell like old habits and stale silence. And we didn't maintain it. We just lived in it until the lights started flickering and the walls got thin. The night Daniel came over, yeah. That night. That's what this whole thing started with, right? You probably thought that title meant something scandalous. But the truth is quieter than that. He didn't confess love. He didn't make a move. He told me something simple. Something human. He said, "You seem lonely. And you deserve more than to carry that alone." And then he left. Just like that. No lines crossed, no rumors to feed. Just a man who saw me when I needed to feel seen. And you know what? That moment made me realize just how long it had been since I felt understood, without needing to explain myself. I don't blame Jeremy. He did what he could. And in the end, so did I. We didn't scream. We didn't slam doors. We didn't destroy anything. We just stopped pretending it still fit. We spent one last morning together, sitting on opposite ends of the couch, sipping coffee in quiet companionship. No grand gestures. No ugly crying. Just a kind of mutual release. He asked if I'd be okay. I said yes. I asked if he would be. He didn't lie, he said, eventually. And then he left to stay with his brother for a while. We haven't talked much since. But sometimes that's the kindest ending love can offer, not forever, not fantasy. But truth. And room to grow beyond each other. I'm learning how to be alone now. Really alone. Not just the absence of someone kind of alone, but the kind where you sit with yourself and ask, what do I want? What does love mean to me now? I'm still answering that. But I know this, love without listening isn't love. Desire without depth is a performance. And silence, real silence, doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes, it's the sound of something quietly dying. And learning how to grieve that without blaming anyone. That's been the most intimate thing I've done in years.